makes things the way they are. Mapped Out, navigating a changing world. Now on YouTube.
Welcome to Ask DW on YouTube. I'm Phil Gale. This is the show where your questions take centre stage. Today, taking a closer look at Tuesday's bridge collapse in the US city of Baltimore and taking your questions and comments on youtube.com/DW News. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by today's guest, Atarad Azizi Namini, who's a professor of structural and bridge engineering at Florida International University. And, of course, we'll bring you the latest from our correspondents in Baltimore and in Washington. The main point of this show is to put you at the centre, so send us your comments and questions regarding events at the Francis Scott Key Bridge at youtube.com/DW News. Well, the latest we have at this stage is that 6 people are still missing after a massive cargo ship crashed into this major bridge in the US port city of Baltimore, causing the Francis Scott Key Bridge to collapse. Maryland's governor said the ship, the Dali, had reported losing power shortly before the incident and made a mayday call just before the crash. He added that an initial investigation suggested it was an accident and that there was no credible evidence suggesting terrorism.
The Francis Scott Key Bridge, after the Singapore-flagged container ship smashed into one of its pillars. The collapse of the bridge was caught live by a web broadcast. The ship struck at 1:30 a.m. Within minutes, a major search and rescue operation was underway.
The Coast Guard's primary mission right now is search and rescue, looking for any survivors in the water.
We're basically searching for everyone that was potentially on the bridge. As you can imagine, it's the middle of the night. You know, what type of traffic was there, how many workers were there.
This video uploaded by a ship tracking service shows the vessel's path as it went off course and into the bridge. It issued a distress call minutes before the collision. Authorities said workers then stopped cars from crossing the bridge afterwards, saving lives. Experts say the size of the ship simply overwhelmed the support structure.
A heavy ship like that will impart a very large load of many thousands of tons when it hits something solid. And the ship has obviously struck the support of the bridge. Not surprisingly, then the bridge collapses because the support is a very relatively flimsy structure.
Meanwhile, people in the region are bracing for the aftermath. The port of Baltimore is key to shipping on the U.S. East Coast, and the collapsed bridge will likely create traffic jams for months or even years to come.
OK, let's take you straight to the scene of this incident in the port city of Baltimore. Our reporter, Janelle D is there. Welcome, Janelle. What are you seeing?
Hi, Phil. So just to remind our viewers of where we have been covering this story from, we are standing at the northern side of the bridge. And I don't know, you might just be able to make out the start of the bridge behind me and where it stops in midair. Obviously, the rest of the bridge after that point has already fallen into the river. You might also be able to see the cargo ship that is stuck into the remainder of the bridge. Now, Phil, this is as close as we've been allowed to go. We've been told that going any closer to the scene might present some safety or some structural integrity issues. But this has been a spot where local and state officials have been dropping by periodically to give us updates on especially the search and rescue operations. So earlier today, we heard from Maryland Governor Wes Moore. He was here talking about those life-saving operations, talking about how grateful he was to the first responders, and providing us that update again about the 6 people who are currently unaccounted for. They were workers working to repair the potholes on the bridge. Divers are currently trying to locate them. But because of that distress signal that ship was able to send out, and that allowed officials to close the bridge from both ends, fears of a mass casualty event seem to be calming down somewhat. Now, we're now waiting to hear from the National Transport Safety Board. They're expected here later today, as well as Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg. He's already thought to be in the area. And of course, Phil, there are going to be a lot of questions around how exactly this happened, what this will mean for Baltimore and for Maryland. This was a very key artery. 30,000 commuters cross this bridge every day. But for now, of course, the focus has to be on those missing people and all the potential life-saving operations and recovery operations that are associated with that search.
OK, Janelle D in Baltimore. For now, thank you so much. All right, let's... So now we're going to bring in our other guests, our reporter Stefan Siemens in Washington and Atrod Azizi Namini. He's a professor of structural and bridge engineering at Florida International University. He joins us from New Orleans in the U.S. state of Louisiana. They're standing by to take your questions and comments on youtube.com/DW News. Can we start with you, please, Professor Azizi Namini? Just tell us what sort of bridge we are dealing with here. What sort of bridge is the Francis Scott Key Bridge?
The bridge is a true steel truss bridge. And it was built in the mid-1970s. But really, what happened today has really nothing to do with the type of the bridge that we are dealing with. It has to do, I think, with other factors, which I can elaborate on. But this is a steel truss bridge. It's a multi-span, fairly long span. In fact, the main span, I believe, it was said to be one of the longest one at the time that it was built.
OK. Stefan Siemens in Washington, just walk us through the sequence of events, because 6 people still missing, but this is a very busy interstate highway. It could have been a lot worse.
It could have been a lot worse. I mean, time when this occurred was probably, I hate to say it, on the side of all of this. And what I mean by this is that could have been really, really worse. Imagine this to happen during rush hour. There would have been probably hundreds of cars and probably hundreds of people impacted and in the water. As bad as it is that search and rescue operations are going on for 6 people who are still missing, it could have been worse. So here's the timeline for this. At 1:24 a.m., the Dali, or D-A-L-I, container ship, that's the name of the container ship under Singaporean flag, the lights started to flicker. At 1:25, a minute later, it changed course, and that we have seen on this tracker you showed earlier. At 1:26 until 1:27, the lights keep flickering and it loses power. At 1:27, so at the end of 1:27, 1:28, it hits the bridge. At 1:40, 911 dispatcher alerts the Baltimore Fire Department of the incident, and at 1:50 a.m. the first fire unit was on the scene. The ship has reportedly, and that is confirmed by federal as well as state authorities, had issued a mayday just before it hit the bridge. There was an apparent power outage, and that's what triggered the mayday call. As we also heard, thank goodness, authorities were able to close off the bridge. Otherwise, that could have been really, really worse.
OK, thanks for walking us through that, Stefan. Let's take the first, then, of your questions to us here on Ask DW. That's at youtube.com/DW News. So what went wrong with the cargo ship? What's being said, Stefan Siemens?
Power outage. The exact cause for why a container ship like this, and it's a massive ship, it's 984 feet long, that's about the size of 3 football fields, the length of 3 football fields, loses power after it leaves port. It was on its way from Baltimore to Colombo. We don't know that yet. That is the task for the National Transportation Board and Safety Board to figure out, NTSB, and for other experts, they will look into this with full cooperation of reportedly of the ship owner of the ship and the operating company who operates the ship. But this was the reason: power outage. They lost steering, assumingly, couldn't steer the ship anymore into the lane and hit the pylon.
And Professor Azizi Namini, what's your understanding of what went wrong?
I think what happened from the photos that I have seen. Okay, I saw a photo of the bridge before the collapse. This was, I believe, it was in 2018. What caught my eyes is that for this type of bridge that's in the water where there's a lots of ship traffics, we protect the supports of the bridge by building some protection cell or some type of structures that are completely away from the bridge itself, but its function is to divert any kind of ship that has lost the control or is getting close to the bridge, to divert it and prevent the ship hitting the bridge. This is we follow for the design of such structures that protects the bridge. We follow the provisions of a governing specification in the U.S., which is AASHTO LRFD Bridge Design Specification, and there's a very specific rules for that. What caught my eyes is that these protection cells or structures that are supposed to be away from the bridge and protect the bridge from a ship in it was very minimal. At least that's the way. It's very early to say. That's why this problem, I think, is related more to that than the type of the bridge. If you have any multi-span bridge, if you take one of the support, that bridge is going to collapse. It doesn't matter if it's a steel, if it's a concrete, or whatever you have. So I think my primary thinking right now is that for whatever reason, I don't believe it's a, I think that what's important in this case is that we have the provisions to make sure that the ships that are out of control doesn't hit the bridge itself. There are, and that's through the very specific design provision, building a structure that are completely isolated from the bridge. And that, to me, that structure for this bridge was fairly minimal. That could be one of the reasons.
OK, speculating at this stage, but expert speculation, so we thank you for that. Taking your questions regarding today's incident on the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, youtube.com/DW News. Let's get the next question. So, is there any bridge in the world that could take the same hit and remain standing? That sounds like one for you, Professor Azizi Namini.
I don't believe you can just without those protection cells that we have to build. If a bridge doesn't have that, any type of support, if it's hit by this vessel was probably close to 100,000 tons. So it's a massive weight, and then you take into account the velocity at which it is traveling, and then the pressure that is exerted by the water. You add those things together, we are talking about the millions of pounds of the forces, and we don't design the pier for that. We design the protection elements for it. So there is no such a bridge that without any protection element can take such a large, massive forces and survive.
OK, that question coming into us here at DW from Zek. Stefan Seaman, is anybody saying anything at this stage about maintenance of this particular bit of important infrastructure there in Baltimore?
Yeah, it wasn't flagged. So every year, specific authorities go to bridges all over the country here and issue a report about how in what shape they are, if they're in good shape or if there needs to be repairs done, etc., etc. Apparently, this bridge was in good structural condition. It is, compared to other bridges we have here in the United States and other infrastructure, actually not that old. As the professor pointed out, it was built in 1970s. We have bridges that were built in the 1950s, and maybe they are more of a concern than the Francis Scott Key Bridge here. But no, there was no reports of that there was anything wrong with the bridge. I think the professor is there on a good path. You know, this ship had a capacity, or has a capacity to carry 10,000 TEUs. What is TEUs? That's a 20-foot equivalent unit. That is the name for those containers. On this ship, at point of collision with the bridge, were 4,679 TEUs or containers. So that is a lot of weight. And again, with speed and water pressure and all of that, it hits the bridge. I'm not sure that anybody would ever tell you that any bridge could withstand that or something similar like this. The bridge was in fine condition as of now, as we hear and as we heard from federal and local authorities.
OK, you're watching Ask DW on DW News on YouTube, youtube.com/DW News for your comments and questions regarding today's events on the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Professor Azizi Namini, so talk us through what is likely to happen now as part of the investigation into what happened.
I think there is going to be several components. In the U.S., when there is an accident related to the bridge, National Transportation Safety Board gets involved. Usually their investigation takes more than a couple of years, at least. And then they look at all the evidences, and then they issue a report. They explain what they think was the cause of the accident. And then they also make the recommendation. They will also, I think, they're going to look at, like I said, I really don't believe this has anything to do with the condition of the bridge, whether the bridge was inspected correctly or there was any problem with the structural capacity or the elements of the bridge. It has nothing to do with that. I don't think so. This is, I think, they're going to look at trying to see that if I believe they're going to concentrate probably on how the bridge piers were protected, whether they were upgraded, because this bridge was designed back in the early 1970s, and our governing specification evolves, and the forces that we have to design those protection element changes. So they're going to look at that, and then they're going to. I think they're going to come up with some recommendations that's going to affect the existing bridges that we have, and to make sure that such accident doesn't happen again. But it's going to take a couple of years. I don't believe it's going to this thing resolved in a matter of a weeks or so. The conclusion, usually National Transportation Safety Board, if they see something that can be concluded right away, they will provide the interim reports if they feel like there's a safety issue that we can implement right away.
OK, we're going to come back to that point. Let's take another question to us at the moment, right now, though. Just pop your questions and comments in the comments box down below. Zach Lovelace has got in touch and said, was there a malfunction with the cargo ship? What's being said, Stefan?
Well, yeah, there was a malfunction. It is said that and that comes from the president's mouth. So, and he's not going to announce this if he hasn't checked with the equivalent people on site and on the ship and with the ship and so on. There was a malfunction. The ship lost power a couple of times, and you actually can see this on some video floating around, and maybe we have that too. Before the bridge collapses, you can see the lights flickering on the ship. Again, for what reason, that is still to be determined. We don't know that, why it lost power, but it is determined the ship lost power and got off course. Just as a reminder, you know, this ship is not... this sounds silly, but there's two pilots. There were two pilots on board and 22 crew. Those two pilots, this is their job to get the ship actually in one piece out of the harbor, out of the port, and not damage or run into a bridge. And there's no indication that they did this willingly or purposefully. Of course not. So it was an accident and the ship lost power. Why? For what reason the power was lost? We don't have any answer on this yet.
OK, thanks very much for that question. To us here at Ask DW. Let's take your next question. Just pop them down there in the comments. So next question coming up. So would more regulations and minimum standards help avoid such disasters? Professor Azizi Namini, what do you think?
I think from a photo that I have seen that was taken back in the 2018, I believe those structures that were supposed to protect the pier was not there. One of the things is that, for example, is that why they were not upgraded maybe. And because the new ones, the new long span bridges have a very solid such a structure. So there could be, again, these are all speculations. We could be completely wrong, but it's gonna, my gut feeling is that that's where some of the changes is gonna come, that if there is such bridges that doesn't have those protection elements, needs to be upgraded ASAP.
OK, some news just reaching us now regarding the president. President Biden is said to be on his way to Baltimore. I think we've got some pictures of Air Force One. Let's take a look at those. So that's waiting for the president to get on board and make his way to Baltimore. Stefan Zeman, what is being said politically? We're obviously in the run-up to a presidential election. No one appears to be making political capital out of this at the moment, which I suppose is a good thing.
Yeah, it is, but it's not unlikely, because guess what? It's still, again, a reminder, a search and rescue operation. There's still 6 people rescuers are looking for, and only if you're sarcastic, you say, okay, they're just now looking for 6 bodies, because the truth is also that the water temperatures are really not designed at the moment to support life for substantial amount of time. So, however, it's a search and rescue operation. It's just hours after this happens. I don't think that anybody will come up today and will try to gain political capital out of this. But, of course, what we know from the president, who held a speech, a little address just about half an hour before we went on with this program, is that he said that he will ask Congress, Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, those are the people who held the purse, who approved the money for anything the executive, the president, will or wants to spend. He will ask Congress to foot the bill, basically, to rebuild this bridge, which will take years and years, and which will be at least millions, if not maybe billions of dollars to do this to the standards we have in 2024 now. But he said he will do everything he can so that the government will foot this bill. As he says, it was just a tragic accident. Also guaranteed, and that all federal resources are now at hand for the governor in Maryland and for the mayor in Baltimore and for all people impacted there. And let me say something about impact, and that is also why he is going there. And of course, this is a presidential thing to do. When you have an incident like this, as a president, you're kind of expected really to show presence, to be there, to own this situation and to calm people and to give them, well, basically hope and vision and forward looking. There is 830,000 cars, new cars come through this port every year. So this is a economic magnitude here, which we also have to consider, right? 15,000 jobs are impacted by this bridge now being in the water and blocking actually all travel, sea travel, not just car travel across the bridge, but also ships to go into the port or leave the port, right? So they have to clear this shipping lane fairly quickly if they want to avoid damage. damage, economic damage. And that is what, of course, the president will and has emphasized. This is what he's going to make his focus now.
Right.
It's about the people, the rescue, the search right now. But in a couple of days, it will all be about looking forward and how to rectify the situation.
OK, thank you for that, Stefan. Stefan Siemens is our reporter in Washington. We also have with us Professor Atarod Aziz-Nomini, who from Florida International University, who is a bridge expert. Taking your comments and your questions on the dw.com /DW News. Excuse me, youtube.com /DW News. Let's take our next question then. Could the location of the collision pose a significant national security issue? Do you want to pick that up, Stefan?
Yeah, gladly. I don't think that's a national security issue in terms of, I mean, in the early hour after this, the speculation was rife if this was maybe intentional on a terrorist attack. But I think that's ruled out completely. FBI and other law enforcement authorities have ruled this out so far. Accident, tragic. But again, the impact on economy, on regional economy and the nation. Again, Baltimore is a huge port. There's a lot of goods coming in and out of this port is immense, is significant, and that has an impact. And politicians, experts, economists, and everybody else, you and me, the average person in America, if whatever, your peanut butter starts costing more, or your car, and they're already very expensive in the United States, then it's because, or maybe because, this bridge is now in the water and is blocking the ferryway there to the port. So that has an impact for sure.
OK, thank you for that. Let's take our next question to Ask DW. Here it is. Any moment now. There it is. So was the ship travelling under the speed limit for such a busy port area? What do you think, Professor Aziz-Nomini? Was speed a factor?
My opinion is that seemed like it wasn't traveling very fast. I think again it's more related to the protection structure that should have been around the pier, which was minimal to me, in my opinion.
Right, and just clue us in how this works then for shipping into and out of a port. You said there are 2 pilots on board, and so presumably there are speed limits in these areas.
Are you asking me or?
But, yes, well, you were the one who mentioned the pilots. I was wondering if you knew any more about it.
No, I don't. But I'm
okay.
pretty
You're
sure
a bridge man. That's fair enough.
Yeah, from what I know, usually these kind of ships, when they go into the harbor, I think there is a local person that takes over and navigates until they are in the open seas, I believe.
OK, thank you. Let's take the next question then to Ask DW. Here he comes. So is the shipping company going to face any consequences? What's being said, Stefan Siemens?
Very interesting question. That was actually a question which was posed to the president at his little press conference he gave there before he took off now to Baltimore, and he didn't answer it because, of course, that's a legitimate question, right? So the president is promising Baltimore and Maryland to rebuild the bridge and to foot the bill. That's taxpayers' money, which has to come from somewhere. Well, it was, again, a ship which caused this havoc. So how is responsibility divided there? Are they in the books for some compensation to the government, to the United States? That's a good question. Very good, very interesting. Something to look at for me and for others. And we'll keep you posted, but there is no answer on this yet.
OK, thank you for that. Professor Aziz-Nomini, you talked about a couple of years for an investigation. In the meantime, does the bridge remain closed?
Oh, of course. Of course. I mean, multi-span is gone. So there's no way for that bridge to function. So I think it's going to remain closed. But I think from what it was said is that they're going to start right away, apparently, to try to build a bridge. Now, there are some technology that nowadays that you can build a bridge a bit faster. It doesn't mean that the total construction time is going to change much, but I think prefabricated bridge elements, for example, what we call accelerated bridge construction, there are technologies out there that can help. The other thing is that when you build a bridge, there's a lots of tasks that's involved like a environmental impact analysis, getting a permit, and things like that. This is an emergency case. So, and the fact that the federal government has got involved and the president has made a comment that the federal government is going to pay the entire cost, and this is really a focal national point. I think all the agencies that are involved in building the bridge, they're going to work collaboratively in a parallel process, and I think they're going to try to build the new bridge parallel to the investigation that is going on. I don't believe they're going to wait until the National Transportation Safety Board finish its investigation and give a recommendation before they start building the new bridge. So I think they're going to go in parallel.
OK. Stefan Siemens, pick that up for us, if you would. 2 years, obviously we are speculating, but if we take the professor at his word, 2 years of this bridge being closed, that's going to have massive ramifications for traffic, shipping and the economic future of Baltimore.
Yeah, absolutely right. Actually, the professor is right on the money there. With 2 years is not unfathomable for the NTSB investigation. If they can get this done faster, fine. But it's not going to be under a year. This takes time. This takes a lot of time to do this because they're doing painstaking work, and they take their time to be right at the end. Right when they issue reports, interim reports, or the final report, they want to be absolutely sure that they really found everything what was wrong went wrong and what could have been better, because they need to come up with recommendations how to rectify, how to make this not a problem in the future. However, so this is twofold, this problem. Number one, it's going to take a few days now first to this week is completely done. There is no rebuilding this week. This week will be spent on bringing the massive barges and cranes in to this spot to lift the pieces out of the water, out of this shipping lane there. So that would be the first step. This, as the professor pointed out, is under the auspices of federal government now, state government, local government. So, but it's all hands on deck, and those agencies and authorities and departments are expected to work hand in hand to make this happen quickly. Now, quickly is relative. Again, few days it takes to get the hardware in, the tools in, to lift the rubbish out of the water, the remains of the destroyed bridge out of the water, to re-establish a shipping lane. Then you have hope to get to the numbers again you had before this happened today in terms of what comes into the port and what goes out of the port. As the professor said, there will be building the bridge, or a thorough way, because again, this bridge is a very important link in a highway system here in the East Coast, and that is now cut. So there's a lot of detouring going on now, and there's people, they have steam or smoke coming out of their ears now, trying to figure out how to redirect the traffic flow that makes sense. Again, 30,000 cars a day, right? You can't just put this through a neighborhood. So it'll take time. Yes, they will try everything to make this, to rebuild a bridge, and then the bridge as soon as they can, as fast as they can.
Thank you for that.
Difficult.
Thanks for that, Stefan. Let's take another question here on Ask DW. Questions in the comments down there. Next one from Peter B. Should the ship have had tugboats assisting it to leave the port? What's being said about well, perhaps, Stefan, you can talk us through the port of Baltimore. And this was a ship leaving Baltimore for Colombo, I believe.
Right, that's correct. And that's why those two pilots, you see those pilots, this is a personnel called, which comes to the ship. which helps the captain and the crew who steers the ship out of the port safely. So this is not, they don't come with the ship. They come from the port authority, and those are called pilots. And there were 2 on board. So they come with a tugboat, and they come and got on the ship and piloted the ship out of the harbor. And then, they go back on their tugboat and go back into the port. But here's what happened. Power outage. No pilot can do anything about this. You can pilot all you want. If you don't have any power, you can't steer. You can't steer, you hit something. And this is what happened here. So port authorities were on the ship, tried to pilot it out. That's their job. They know every inch of the water is there to do this safely. They're getting on the ship. They're trying to do this. If you lose power, they can't do anything. And that's what happened.
OK, thank you for that. You're watching Ask DW. The latest on this Francis Scott Key Bridge is that President Biden is on his way to Baltimore. Avtar Ashahi has got in touch and said and asked, was the ship overloaded? What's being said about the cargo on board, Stefan?
No, it was not overloaded. It has a capacity to load 10,000 TEUs. Again, those 20-foot equivalent units, those are huge containers, 20-foot containers, you see. But it was only halfway loaded with 4,679 containers. So there was no weight issue whatsoever.
OK. So going back to the bridge then, Professor, so a 2-year gap that there's going to be. How do you go about rebuilding a bridge?
The way you build a bridge, I mean, in this case, this is called the emergency case. In the case that we build bridges on an emergency case, all the agencies that are involved in design and construction of the bridge, they work in parallel process. So they don't work in series. So another way, you don't finish one task and then go to the next task. That's a usual way of doing things. In this case, for example, environmental impact analysis and all those issues are going to be done in parallel. The process of contracting is going to be done faster. The process of the design is going to be faster. There's going to be collaboration very closely between the contractors and the designers and the fabricators. There's going to be facility. Since the federal government and the president made a comment, I mean, the funding, which is very important, is going to be put in place right away, and that's going to facilitate quite a bit. So I think I would not be surprised if the design of the new bridge is completed within just a few months, and then to proceed with the fabrications of the bridge elements. Like I said, we have technologies like accelerated bridge construction,
right,
which means long-span bridge, actually, it's fairly economical. It can help to expedite the construction of it. So,
and President Biden
I think it's going to be...
President Biden has talked about the country picking up the bill for that. Could you? I appreciate that I'm asking you to speculate, but give us an idea of the order of magnitude of the cost of this rebuilding.
I can tell you, I was remotely involved in the New York Tappan Zee Bridge, which is a very long span bridge, and that bridge was about $4 billion. So I think in this case, you're looking at at least a couple of billions of dollars for the design and construction of the bridge, especially after the pandemic. The cost of the construction has really gone up significantly by a factor of 2, I would say. So it's going to be fairly expensive.
So, it certainly sounds that way. Let's take our next question here on Ask DW. Here it comes. So this from Adnan. Will they use car ferries or something until the bridge has been rebuilt? So what about traffic across the river, Stefan?
A good question. I don't know. It's a very good question. It's actually what I ask myself too. But and I know that my colleagues on scene ask those questions, but we don't have any answers for this yet because again, this is day one after this happened. There's still again a search and rescue mission, an operation going on. Officials they want to focus on this and they want to buy some time, of course, for themselves too, and rightfully so, actually, to answer those questions, which our viewers and we have too. How do you solve this problem? For now, it's detours. That highway is a no-go to cross into Baltimore or along the port. So it's a lot of traffic jams, a lot of hassle, a lot of headaches for thousands and thousands of people for days to come.
So, Professor, Professor Azizi Namini, we're talking about years. Yeah, so 2 years for an investigation, and then the design and construction to happen, and then the thing to be open. So, at a guess, when would you anticipate traffic flowing over this bridge or its replacement next?
Like I said, I think these two things are going to go in parallel. I don't believe, I'm almost certain that they are not going to wait until the National Transportation Safety Board finish its investigation before they start building the new bridge. I think they're going to go in parallel. So what we are saying, probably my guess would be 2 years from now, 2.5 years from now, we may have a new bridge.
Right. OK. Thank you for that. Let's take our next question to us here on Ask DW. Here it comes. So what will happen to the cars that fell into the river? A lot of environmental damage that's been caused by this, Stefan.
The official answer is no from the Synergy Group. The Synergy Group is the ship manager of this ship. They actually, Maersk was operated by Maersk, but Synergy Group is the owner of the ship. They're managing 6,600 plus vessels all over the world, and they said that there is no environmental damage expected and reported yet. Now, authorities will look into this. So, again, there's no container of the ship in the water. There's nothing, whatever this ship carried is in the water. It is those vehicles which were on the bridge of those work crews who we're still looking for. Those 6 individuals which fell into the water, and maybe 1 or 2 other vehicles. But again, this has nothing to do with the ship. Nothing off the ship went into the water. The ship is actually not damaged in terms of any environmental hazard as far as we know as of now. And those vehicles which are in the water, as private vehicles, or construction vehicles, they will be lifted out of the water like everything else as soon as those barrages and cranes arrive.
OK, thanks for that. Last few minutes on Ask DW. Let's get another question. Here it comes. So who investigates a disaster like this in the US? That's from Michelle. So I think that's one for you, Stefan, and then we'll come to you, Professor.
Okay, yeah, this is predominantly the NTSB, that's the National Transportation and Safety Board. This is an agency which is called in whenever something happens in terms of transportation. They investigate and they take their time to do this, and they will be one of the lead agencies. Of course, they are in conjunction with the Department of Transport, DOT, federal and state. Again, you have basically everything in the federal government mirrors what you have in the state and vice versa. So lots of those agencies. Again, national security or law enforcement, I don't think they will be involved much there. They will be backing off now because for them, it seems to be really, really clear that this was an accident and not any ill will or ill doing by anybody with intention.
OK, thank you for that. We'll wrap that up there. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you. You've just been hearing from our reporter in Washington, Stefan Siemens, and also from Professor Atarad Azizi Namini from Florida International University. Thank you both. Thank you for watching Ask DW. We'll have more world news at the top of the hour. Have a good day.
This group is hunting for some of the world's rarest eggs. They are searching for the endangered kiwi birds of Aotearoa, New Zealand, to steal their eggs and save them from predators. Almost 95% of kiwi chicks are killed in the wild. If nothing is done, they will likely disappear.
In New Zealand, we call ourselves Kiwi. It would be pretty bad if we let our national bird die out.
Thousands of people have joined a massive program to defend the kiwi and kill their predators. They're showing what it takes for a country to protect its natural treasures. In the lush hills of the Coromandel Peninsula in New Zealand's North Island, a remarkable rescue mission is underway, giving signs of hope for an endangered national symbol, the kiwi. Few people ever see kiwi in the wild. Bronnie Kennedy has. The encounter motivated her to help save them from extinction.
I have actually seen a kiwi on a visit to New Zealand some years ago. It was amazing to see that